Hi, it's Larry Kaul from Change Agent Board. I'm here with Glen Torregiani and Dave Buch. Glen is the president of OppGen, and Dave is the general manager of Call Sales Partners and also involved with OppGen. And Glen kind of shares time with Call Sales Partners as well as our EVP of Sales. So what we're doing here in Change Agent Board is we're going to talk about new business development. As most of you know, there are massive changes going on in this area, and it has nothing to do with the coronavirus. Or this is something that's been going on for a long time. It was gradual, and now we're seeing it as a fundamental shift. So we're going to do a series. There'll be a number of episodes here, and the series topic that we're going to stay consistent to is about, did your competitors dump the call, email, and post approach to new business development? That's what this is all about. Have your competitors pulled away from you? What we're seeing is that companies that are figuring this out are pulling away in their competitive set, and their competitors don't know why. They're doing so much better. So let's get into episode 1. So the title of episode 1 is, what have people been doing all these years? So let me ask Dave first. Why did email, call, and post stop working?
Well, I would say in one word, it would be saturation. So in all three of those areas, the tendency of the public is, somebody will come out and say, hey, this is working, and this is working great. And then everybody does it, jumps on. And now I'm sure everybody that's watching this understands, that there are so many emails coming in unsolicited to your inbox, or so many posts that are inundating your social media, or even so many calls that you have not asked for. That there's actually more effort in trying to avoid them than actually to embrace them, right? So there's a lot of techniques that have been developed to be cute about it, like make your phone calls really informal. Hey, Joe, just trying to catch up with you, and people see right through that stuff. So the interruptive, what we call the disruptive marketing that has become pervasive has really turned the public off, enough so that the government and the agencies, the advocate agencies, are starting to crack down really hard, as you can see has happened over the last several years. So that's kind of where we are right now. It's like, for marketers, we're going, hey, we've still got to do what we do. So how can we do it without pissing everyone off? Is really the question of the day.
So Glen, having heard that and knowing what we're doing and what's working and what's not working and where we're improving, is email and calling dead?
I'm actually going to push back a little bit on what Dave said. I don't think they're dead. I don't think they've gone away. What I think is they're not working like they used to. And whereas 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were the solution, now they're just a part of the solution. And I think that's the big difference. You used to feel as though you could shoot an email out, and if it was a good email, you'd get some interest and maybe get a meeting out of it, get some replies out of it. You could pick up the phone and call someone and convince them to hop on a 30-minute conversation. Now that's expecting too much because of what Dave said, because of oversaturation. I think email is still an important part of an equation, but it's more one of several drivers and one of several ways to touch people. You need to be you need to be omnipresent. You need to be involved in different areas. You need to be asking people less and giving them more. And that's really the big difference from my perspective. I think email still works, but as part of a much larger process. Cold calling still works, but maybe not the way it once did, to try and pick them up on the phone and nail a meeting. It's to drive them someplace, to give them some piece of value before you try and get that meeting. So I think I don't think I'd go so far as to say it doesn't work. I just say it's not the complete picture anymore. And 2 or 3 years ago, I would have been called a heretic for saying that.
A heretic. People get passionate about this stuff, and they build companies around having an opinion. But Dave, are you saying it does? Are you really saying it doesn't work?
No, I'm not saying it doesn't work. What I'm saying is that people are annoyed by it, and if you happen to hit the right target and give them the right message at the right time, they get over that annoyance very quickly. But most of the time, since it's very hard to do, you don't. So there are the techniques that we've been working on are what Glenn said: say less, offer more, and target better. So all of these things make it so that when you do disrupt, and you are disrupting when you send a cold email, there's no way around that. Nope. That you have really thought it out and are adding value. So yeah, it's not dead. In fact, it's the hottest tool in my toolbox. I mean, it works better than anything else, but it's getting to be much more scientific and much less shotgun, scorch earth kind of stuff that it used to be.
So can we agree then that email, it's not about email and call and post? Those are just tactics and channels. It's like, I got a wrench in my toolbox, I got a pliers, I got a flamethrower, maybe, over in the garage. And what it's more about is how you do these things and how you put them together.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you also have to, to your analogy, if you try to pound a nail in with a wrench, it is very difficult to do. Okay, so it's becoming more and more important to understand which medium is the right one to use for what message. And
how they complement each other and how they work together. It's not just throw it all against the wall and see what sticks. It's be very targeted, very precise, and think through how you want to interact with people and on what channels and where you want to take them after that. So I think the days of just blasting out to whomever and see who bites that is over. That is definitely over.
So what we're saying then is, when we say email, call, and post stop working, we're not saying those tools stop working. What we're talking about is the application of those tools and how they're used.
Absolutely.
That has stopped working. We all know that has stopped working. So that leads to the question of where are the innovations? If I'm saying there's so many innovations, what are they to get beyond this old way of application of these techniques?
Well, one of the innovations, I don't want to say just technology innovation. It's thought innovation. It's understanding that it's not just that the people you're reaching out to have gotten more sophisticated. It's the various tools out there to block you from reaching them have gotten more sophisticated. The ISPs have gotten better at blocking. I can't tell you how many clients that we've brought on board that talk about delivery rates in the 3 to 10% and feel like they're doing a good job. So it's not just sending them out. It's how do you warm up that domain? How do you keep it warm? How do you keep it active? How do you keep it from getting flagged as a producer of spam, so that your emails are making it into the inboxes of the people you actually want to talk to? It's where do you drive them from that email? Is that email step one in a process, or is that email the end game? A lot of people think that email's the end game, and it shouldn't be. It should be step one in an interactive process where you're trying to find multiple ways to communicate with someone and drive them to where you want to drive them. It's where you drive them to has been a major innovation. It used to be that the only place you try to drive them to was a reply and a phone call. Now you might want to drive them to landing pages and funnels and places where you can give them something and create that value and begin to build trust, as opposed to just trying to knock things out. So there are definitely technological innovations, but there's also a lot of thought innovation on what is the best way to reach people, how to avoid objections before you entrenched in them, and how to work within the system to get the best results.
One of the things you said that I found so interesting is that there's two different industries here you're talking about that are totally different. Different kinds of people, different philosophies, and different methodologies. The digital marketing industry, inbound, and the lead generation prospecting industry, outbound. So what you're talking about are, as those two industries collide, Dave, is there a breaking down of the wall there that is part of this innovation and change?
Well, I would say that they're not colliding, they're combining. The adoption of funnels and allows this interaction, interplay between all of these different technologies that really start making it hard to recognize what inbound and outbound is.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I wanted to say about from a technology standpoint and using a technology, cold email in the kind of the new way of doing things, what its main role is to get the person to opt in to your messaging. So when you want to get away from cold email as fast as possible, right? So we design all of our messaging and our offers to give them something of value very early on that will have them opt in to our flow. At that point, they're part of our audience. We own that channel, and at that point, if we don't abuse it, we have much more freedom in communicating with this person. But you got to get that first step. In the past, we kind of skipped over that. You know, we would actually call. I mean, the expectation was you get an open of an email, you're on the phone with the guy. You know, that's skipping like 50 steps, right? So yeah, maybe every once in a while you get lucky and you get somebody, but it's using the new strategies of value ladder and appropriate offer value propositions makes it a lot easier to bring somebody into your message stream without having to beat them over the head for weeks.
You know, I want to make a quick distinction with one word you chose, Dave, which is a very marketing-centric word, and that's opt-in. From a sales approach, I consider opt-in engagement. You know, in a marketing parlay, people consider opt-in normally you check a box, you give them your email and agree to further correspondence or newsletters. It's much more passive. And in sales, when we do outreach and we do targeted outreach and we figure out who we're looking at, we work on emails and funnels and calls and social media engagement. All these things are for a primary purpose, and that is to drive engagement. To me, an opt-in is someone who essentially raises their hand and saying, I find something of interest and potentially of value in what I'm saying here. Let's begin the process of a conversation. Whereas in marketing, really all you're trying to do is get someone to say, yes, I will passively accept things you send me. So it's a very big difference. A marketer is just looking for that person to say, hey, I'm here. You can shout out to me and maybe I'll listen, maybe I won't. whereas a sales opt-in is someone who begins to actually begin that engagement process. And that's what everything we do drives towards.
But I feel like the first step is more like the marketing opt-in. Okay, so I need one thing that they have shown that they're going to go further than that email, and it is kind of an industry accepted thing that if they do that, it may not be an explicit opt-in like you're talking about with checking the box, but if they're open to that and they're curious, I guess is the word I was looking for, at least they're curious, right? And we want to move beyond that very quickly to interested, engaged, things of that sort. But I'm looking for some implicit permission to give this guy more information is what I'm looking for.
So are you saying then that as marketing and outbound, let's say, lead generation are moving closer together, that there's a linear relationship then? So Dave, it starts with marketing, you get that interest, and then outbound intersects and interrupts to get that conversion to sales. Is that what you guys are saying?
It could be. I think, one of the big differences, especially in the Kaul Sales Partners group, is that we don't define something as marketing and sales. We look at it as a continuum, right? So to be able to have that engaged conversation, you have to have somewhat of permission to do that, however that's done, right? We've also found that you have to earn that right to do that. So it's not just a permission, it's earn their trust at least, or prove your value, things of that sort. But to do that, you need to, in the beginning, you have to start with, yeah, I'm okay with talking to you. And it may be, Glenn, I'm not promising I'll listen, but so we start somewhere, because we're starting from, this isn't inbound. I mean, we're starting from, we have a target. We think you'd be interested in what we're saying. They had no say in the matter at that point, right? So I think we're getting better at judging what way to communicate in the beginning to get to the engagement as quickly as possible.
People that signed up to newsletters, you need to judge yourselves by revenue and sales and clients. And the only way to make that work as a small company is to make sure that all your cylinders are firing in the same direction. And that is really merging what has traditionally been a marketing function, which is content output and social media presence and solid copy and creating expertise in a segment of the market with sales, which are things like outbound SDR work and conversations and meetings and account executives, and everything that those traditional marketing avenues are focused at needs to be focused at driving people to engage in conversations with those SDRs and account execs. Because if they're focused on traditional marketing metrics, you will find that the result is not what you're looking for, and the time it takes to get to that result is a lot of spinning your wheels.
Is there a room for branding in here? You mentioned large company branding. Can small companies brand themselves?
Yes, but in a different way. The purpose of a small company branding themselves is not to just go out and make the public aware of their brand. It's to position themselves and their value proposition and what it is they can provide directly to the people who might be buying. So they're not trying to create a brand in the market. They're trying to create a brand and understanding of expertise to the individuals they want to engage with and no one else. And that's a pretty big distinction. And that's why marketing or marketing type work needs to be focused on creating that brand, but again, not in the market, not to the general public, but to the 5,000 or 2,000 or 10,000 people that are likely decision makers in the companies they want to be selling to.
So Dave, if you're looking at personal branding for a small company in a tight audience of people who would be interested in what they have to say, how does that work? That's another totally different kind of skill and capability. Social media marketing, LinkedIn experts, brand platforms, creative agencies are doing these kinds of things. How do you bring all that together?
So I think that the first important step is the same thing that you would do with social media or anything else, is to understand the personas of your audience and the segmentation of your audience, right? So in social media or any other, I don't know, television ads, doesn't matter, your audience will be defined at some level, right? So it's if you're selling a consulting service, you want to figure out what industries you're going to specialize in. Then you're going to say, what level of this organization am I going to speak to? What functions, what departments? So that information is useful in any outreach method, but if you take it further to the science of database marketing, okay, so now let's break it down into actual functioning specs to build a list. Then now you're starting to get specific, right? And you can actually pick people that meet those personas. You can then vary your message depending on that, but you become very much more focused, laser focused, and efficient, and that's the way we attack it.
I want to highlight that what Dave just said, because it's an important thing to highlight. Everything we do at both call sales partners and op generation starts with a list, and every action taken, whether it's a quote unquote marketing action or a sales action, every action for engagement really starts with a list and starts with the question of who are we trying to contact and why do they want to listen? Okay, and that's very different quite often. Now, marketing will look at personas and think about personas, but they'll take much more of a shotgun approach. We take much more of a laser approach and really put that list together. And everything we do from that point forward is focused on actively listening to the market and to those individuals and crafting our outreach and our tactics, whether it be email, whether it be calling, whether it be social media posts, whether it be funnels, whether it be any other sorts of messaging that we'll use to reach out to these people. It's all starts with a list, and that message is focused on the people on that list.
So if I'm going to move beyond traditional, so that means just calling people, yeah, you have a list because you have to know who it is, you have to call them, you have to email them. So maybe there's some customization in those emails. People are getting that. Typically there's some persona development. People are aware of that. They're getting that, the messaging, types of emails. People are understanding this. More systems that allow us to do better domain work. So dealing with the spam blockers, people are still doing that. Good content to post on LinkedIn, people are getting that. A good company page, some kind of a brand presence on the website, people are getting that. But I'm hearing something a little different here, where that is now in the old way, just doing that in itself. So if my competitor's pulling ahead, what do you think they're doing differently than what, let's say I'm listening to this and I feel like I got it under control because I'm doing the calls and the emails and the posts well. Why isn't that good enough for me to win?
Well, I mean, in a word, it's building a profile, right? So there's a journey that a buyer goes through. Pretty much anybody that's in the sales organization understands that concept of, starting in an awareness phase and driving them towards interest through a decisioning process. The trick in the new way of marketing is to understand where these people are on this journey. So you start off getting their name, their title, what persona we guess they are because of what position they hold. But if you now depend on sales to help build a profile of these people, it's much more about the conversations and what they say and asking the right questions and qualification. That is the value, right? So once again, I go back to the marketing part of it is really about getting that engagement. The sales part of it is understanding the customer's needs and presenting the value proposition and a true value offer at the right time in the right way. And so the magic, the science of sales, relationship selling and consultative selling and all the different techniques are not dead. They're not old. They just need to be properly applied with the knowledge of this profile. The profile is available to both marketing efforts, follow-up marketing efforts, and sales efforts, and they're built together. So it's what the person says and what the person does put together that makes it so that you'll be at the right place at the right time.
So what I hear you saying is that the successful companies that are pulling ahead are those that have pulled together all of these different capabilities into a cohesive unit, and they're using the same kinds of tactics. We've heard about all of this stuff before. None of this is new, but they're reorganizing them and doing them in a different way. So let's assume someone who's listening to this knows this, but they're still not getting the result that they want. Why not? What's the barrier that you typically see where someone is trying things and trying to recombine things and is aware of these innovations, knows what path to purchase is, knows what personal branding is, knows how to work lists and database marketing? Why is this so hard?
One thing that I'll put out there that we've been working with our clients pretty heavily on is a concept called a value ladder. And the important thing about a value ladder is understanding what types of value to offer a buyer and when. A lot of our clients come to us with one offer, and that one offer is buy our whole product, and that's it. And they have nothing to give to a prospect or a buyer other than, everything. But everything is a complicated purchase. It's a big product. It takes a lot of time and trust to get there. And it's a lot to ask, especially in an uncertain climate. What's more important is to give people small steps to get to know you, to get to know your expertise, to get to know your product, to get to know what you could provide, and give it to them sort of one step at a time so that they can make sometimes a free item, which you're giving them, sometimes a consultative, sometimes something they can buy, but it's walking them up to the point where they are comfortable to engage in that larger purchase. You need to give them something of value each step of the way till they can get to the full value that you can provide. And very few companies, especially small companies, have embraced that tactic.
Well, what I'm hearing then is that this value ladder concept, which is part of funnel marketing, which we can talk a little bit more about so it's clear, stay away from the jargon around it to help people understand it better, is something you don't see outbound lead generation or inside sales groups ever doing, or even thinking about or aware of as important. And you also don't see digital marketing companies or digital marketers thinking about this either. So if you start incorporating funnel marketing and value ladders into B2B complex sales and outreach, talking about something very new, but also not done on its own, done as part of this sort of integrated, holistic department. So some of the people listening to this may not be familiar with funnel marketing. Dave, do you want to explain a little bit more about what that really is?
Yeah, I mean, in the simplest terms, if I'm going to explain it to somebody, I would say that if you take your offer and your ultimate offer, and then you start breaking it down into knowledge pieces, productivity pieces, all the different kinds of pieces that you can think of, and start putting the understanding and how to and the knowledge stuff in the beginning. What you're trying to build is a path towards your ultimate product. So it's and the beginning, the lower rungs of this ladder are low risk, high value, meaning for the risk that they're taking, they get extreme value. So that's why you'll see in the beginning a lot of free stuff, right? So the risk is like zero, and the value is a lot more than zero. So that makes it a great value. Then you move up from there. Now it may, for a very complex product, you may have to move up many steps of the ladder before any of it is costing anything, right? Because it's really just trying to get the prospect in the right position to hear what you have to say in your offer, and trust that you can deliver it. So what happens is if you take that idea, the value ladder, and you put it in your marketing and your pitches, you pitch the rung on the ladder by itself without trying to lay the whole thing out at once, and take the person in a storytelling trip through the different ladders and thinking each time whether did they progress up that rung. If they didn't progress up that rung, then they basically need another story, right? It's not that they need to be beat over the head with the same thing over and over again. It's that we're going to take a different path. So what you end up looking like, instead of a ladder, really, I think the analogy doesn't really do it justice. It looks more like a tree with branches that go up, right? Because you'll have lots of different places. If you look at a sophisticated funnel, that's exactly what it looks like. Is lots of branches. They all go up in the right direction, higher, but they take different paths to get there, depending on how the buyer wants to buy. So,
if I'm a digital marketer, what I'm hearing is value is valuable content, which is the way it's talked about. So I get an ebook or something, and then the offer is something like more valuable content. Sign up for a newsletter. If you have a sales team involved, it's book a meeting, give us your email address, and we'll keep in touch with you. This sounds different.
yeah. So, I mean, we have to, when you define risk or cost, right, for a busy executive, asking for a 30-minute meeting with a busy executive is high cost to them. And even though it's free, I mean, you're not asking them to pay you. So so I think that gets lost a lot of times back in the old way. You know, we immediately ask for a meeting, right? Well, that's a pretty high cost offer right there. Number one, they know if somebody's trying to get a meeting with me right off the bat, they're going to sell me something. You know, they know that, right? So this is car salesman stuff. So it's so they're going to be even putting it in a higher risk category, right? But if you start with an ebook, you know, an ebook's kind of a general thing, but then maybe add a how-to video on doing something, or a you know, something that explains a complex thing that they need. If you start thinking about the buyer, that they have to go through a journey with their company to get your product in their company, start offering things that make that easier for them to do, and make a decision, convince somebody else, whatever it might be. And then at that point, you're starting to sound a lot more like a partner than a vendor. Okay, and that is the key. That's the trust. When that switches, you are now a lot freer to make suggestions and offer things.
So what I'm hearing is you're bleeding deep into the sales department now.
Sure.
So the marketing idea is the lead generation function hands a lead off, marketing qualified lead, MQL, to inside sales or sales. And there's a lot of discussion about how do you make sure it's qualified and sales accepted and sales accepted lead. And there's this industry of consultants that try to get marketing and sales to work together and have the same objections and definitions. What you're saying is different. So you're talking about the communications process, the right kinds of offers, going even beyond, at some stage, different kinds of content, valuable content offers, but even going beyond that into different kinds of engagements. Some are easier to start with than others, so you can give somebody something more quickly once they trust you and think you're a good trusted advisor, and it's more of a partnership.
So think of a funnel as a web-based story, okay, that you're telling somebody in certain ways, and it's somewhat interactive because they're going to do something and then you can tell them something else. If I can give not only those funnels in the beginning to drive traffic to the sales guys, but I can give them funnels to implement at certain phases in their buyer's journey, right? When they kind of become like a human funnel that is part of this mechanism, and now we're truly interconnected, and they have things that they can give that are funnels within themselves that can drive engagement even higher, and they don't have all that burden on their shoulders all the time, right? So it's really a eye-opening experience when you start thinking about it that way.
You know, I want to touch on two things there. One is that whole idea of trusted advisor, and the other idea is giving them the tools. Part of what you're doing with these value ladder offers is you're giving an opportunity to become that trusted advisor. You're not just asking them to trust you on day one. You're giving them things to build that trust over time. I mean, just like any relationship you have, it takes time to gain that trust, and you're giving them reasons to do it. The other is, if you're selling a complex product or piece of software or service, whatever the case may be, your buyer is someone you are asking to essentially go into their organization and change the way they're doing things today. That is a big task you're asking of your buyer. A lot of people don't realize that. They think they're just asking someone to buy their product. No, what they're asking them to do is to convince their organization to change what they're doing to make room for your product. And even if they have pains already, you're asking them to take a leap of faith, in a sense, that your unknown is going to solve those pains. So a lot of what you're doing is you are giving them the tools to convince their organization that change is worth it, and they can do that change. So by giving them these steps and by giving them these funnels and by giving them these value ladders, you are giving them, as Dave said, the tools to begin to steer the ship of their organization towards the change that your product is going to deliver to them. And that's not something that should be lightly overlooked.
So people who are winning today are finding ways to do this. They're combining all of these different innovations and disciplines together into one department, which is now, from what you're saying, really includes sales, not just lead
Absolutely.
generation and also marketing. This is all coming together. So it's very difficult to do. So if I'm not going to be successful, then why? Is it because of the cost of this? Is it the people? How do you get them to work together? The technology platform? What's prevented me from being able to do this successfully?
I mean, the big thing for me is agility. If you are not agile, meaning in the terms, feedback loop coming at you constantly, multi-way communications, and being able to react immediately and change course, then what good is the information, right? So you can gather a bunch of information, you can have an after action report that says, well, we really screwed that up. But if you actually want to react and do it, salespeople are naturally agile. They have to be, right? They have to be agile on the phone in the moment. Marketing people are not that way. Okay, marketing people are focused, stay on the path, project oriented, get it out the door kind of people, right? So if you're going to combine those two things together, you've got to find a different type of marketing person, okay? Because they're going to have to be as agile as the sales department. So I think that would be my biggest thing.
The big other take is it's multidisciplinary. I mean, if you look at what we're talking about combining aspects of marketing, business development, sales, and even B2C tactics, all into one strategic way of reaching out to people. And what you find in a lot of companies is you have a marketing person, you have a sales person, maybe you have a business development person, but they're each in their lane doing their thing. And there's not anyone with the understanding of that big picture to kind of draw it all together. And a lot of companies just don't have that. Everyone is used to staying in their lane.
And one of the things we see in the companies where they are falling behind drastically is that they don't even have lanes. They've got one lane. So they've got a VP of sales who's hired a small, what they'll call an SDR team to pound the phones. They get them a list. They write some scripts and some messaging. They write some emails. They send out the emails. They maybe have a couple of content pieces they're posting on LinkedIn. They're networking on LinkedIn to try to connect with people. Hi, it's Joe. We're really good at IT. We'd love to meet you. They're doing this kind of stuff. And the change in the world has made that obsolete. So that's not functioning effectively anymore. So the companies that are successful are the ones that are able to move beyond that and cost effectively, because we're talking about smaller companies. So you can't spend. It's easy to do this if you've got a $2-3 million budget. You hire someone who knows how to do it, and they put the team together and the technology, and they go do it.
But
they know how to.
Larry, I mean, I've worked in lots of big companies, and what I would ask the people that are listening to this is to do a quick assessment. Go back and ask your salespeople how much time they've spent on the phone in the last month with their marketing people, and how much has the marketing people spent on the phone with the salespeople. Okay, if they're like what I think they would, it would be very close to zero, right? Now take Glenn and I. Okay, Glenn's sales on marketing. We are on the phone every day, multiple times a day, and I wouldn't dream about actually implementing anything without his input, and I think he feels the same way. So we have naturally, once you get into this, if you talk to each other, you will find there is natural synergy that makes everything better. But the typical organization, there's no awareness between those two groups at all. So.
Well, one of the things that could be going on then, tell me what you think about this, is that the reason this is working is that there aren't two groups. So there is no, you call yourself marketing, but there's really not a marketing department. You call yourself sales, but there's really not a sales department. There's one department.
Yeah, we internally, we kind of refer to ourselves as an opportunity generation team. Right. And everyone is there with one goal and one goal in mind, and that is to drive conversations from awareness to interest to opportunity to close. And everything that we do and everyone does in the organization is with that laser-like focus and using all those, I want to say, tactics as well as strategies to combine in all the different disciplines we've discussed today towards that goal. And there's no department with its own goal in the organization.
So I want to emphasize, there's no departments per se, but there are disciplines. Mm-hmm. And just like any team, it's a team. It's not a department or a group. It's a team. We're actually going towards a goal. We celebrate the same wins. So, but I do very different things in my day than Glenn does, and that is absolutely necessary. He only needs to understand at some level of what I do, and I only need to understand at some level what he does. And we find that level pretty easily. So, but it's more about, I'm interested in what he's doing, and I am vested in his success. That's where leadership, where the top level needs to come in and can make the change, regardless of whether they're in the same building or not. Do they have the same goals? They've got to have the same goals.
So to sum this up, the series theme is new business development. This particular episode is about pulling ahead by dumping what we're just calling old ways of doing email, call, and post. And what I'm hearing is that the companies that are going to pull ahead have found a way to put a team together that's actually working together in an agile fashion in real time, all working towards the same goal, which is to create opportunities in business that comes out of those opportunities. So is that a good way to sum up the, let's say, before and after?
Right.
Yeah. I'd say rather than dumping the old ways, we're adapting them to a new environment and adding to them and enhancing them.
So you're not getting rid of it. You're still calling, you're still sending out emails, you're still writing articles and posting them.
I mean, the only tool we've probably thrown out is direct mail. But even that every once in a while comes up in a conversation. So
now you can't do it because everybody's working from home. So you don't have to write it.
But it's, and I'll tell you this too, if you can think of your organization as a team, then you can concentrate on improving it by using high performance team methods to get it to work better. If it's not a team, if it's not towards the same goal, then none of that is applicable, because you're still separate. You're being analyzed separate. And your goals are separate. So it's really it's what makes it work.
So this first episode is what people have been doing all these years, and then we've got a few more coming up. So episode 2 is going to be called why waste your time on brand sculpting? And we'll define what brand sculpting is. We alluded to it a little bit. And then episode 3 is how do you take advantage of all these innovations? So it'll be more practical tips about how to be able to do this in your own organization. And then we're going to talk about how do you know if you have a good opportunity or not. So if you're getting into the sales part of this and you still have this marketing aligned at the hip with sales, how does everybody determine what's worth your time, and what's not worth your time? So we'll get into that as well. Any final thoughts?
Make it rain.
I was going to say they can go out and close those deals.
Yeah, they said the same thing. It's sales and marketing saying the same, having the same answer. All right. Thanks, Glenn, and thanks, Dave. Really appreciate you taking time.
Thank you.
Change Agent Board. Anybody who's interested, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see some information about us. My email is larry@changeagentboard.org. If you think you'd be a good candidate to join one of our boards as a board member, take a look at that website. You can see some of the topics that we're covering. Let me know, or if you have somebody you think would be a good guest, let us know about that as well. Thanks for joining.